Let's begin with Adam. You have been covering Shiren the Wanderer for the Vita. Talk to us a little bit about your experience with that so far, if you can.
What's the
Okay.
subtitle out of your memory?
Shit. 5+.
I corrected before, but then it turns out I was wrong.
I
So
think it's
maybe-
like Tower of Fate, Dice of Fortune.
Nope.
Tower of Fortune, Dice of Fate.
God damn
Yes,
it.
I was wrong about this because I actually made a comment last time that it was like, how could it be Dice of Fortune? And yeah, so
So this is a roguelike game, and I played a lot of games that either have like a roguelike like style or structure, or maybe like a mini game, or something that came to my mind was like the Final Fantasy X-2 Last Mission, which is basically like a roguelike epilogue. But I've never actually played like a true roguelike. So it was kind of, first of all, it's just kind of fun seeing them all come together. So I had some familiarity with all these different things. But it's kind of fun to actually get like the true roguelike experience. So for those who aren't aware, basically roguelike, the idea is you are going down into a dungeon. It's usually randomly generated in some form, and if you fall, collapse, die, lose all your health, you basically start from square one.
yeah.
You start over. Now, I guess in the original game, Rogue, that this is all based off of the old game, you literally start over. But, modern games, they allow you some workarounds to keep some progress, in a sense, as you go. So, basically, this game, you play as the Wanderer Shiren, I don't know how to pronounce it. And the story premise is actually very, very basic, very simple. A girl named Oya, Oya, is basically on her deathbed, and her boyfriend, let me get the name here, Jirokichi, wants to save her. So he wants to climb up the Tower of Fate, or the Tower of Fortune, and basically talk to the gods to basically change her fate so that she doesn't, pass away. And Shiren decides to help him. And that's basically the story, is you're going up this tower and a couple different sections of the tower and things like that to get to the top. And along the way, so Shiren kind of plays by himself, and you can totally play by yourself if you want, but you can get different allies to join you on your team. And what's kind of neat is that they join in a variety of different ways. One of them, you can just ask them to join you. But there's also a girl who you basically can find on the way up, and you pay her some money to join you. She's the girl with the panda hat in some of the artwork. And then there's also a fox that you save that turns out to be like a fox humanoid, or whatever you call that, that can help you as well. So basically, this game is not an easy game.
No, it never was.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's unfair or anything like that. How do I start this? Let me go back to a game I played last year, which is not quite the same, but it's similar. Etrian Mystery Dungeon. So the Shiren games are basically the mystery dungeon games that
started them. Yeah.
that all the spin-offs are based from. I was one of those people that when Pokemon Mystery Dungeon came out, I didn't know it was a spin-off of something else. Way back when. But that's what they're based off of, these Shiren games. Now, Etrian Mystery Dungeon, one thing I didn't quite like about it is that the game kind of always gave you too much to make the game too easy on you. For example, you could always easily find the items in the game to escape from the dungeon, go back to the base with all your valuables and levels and everything intact. So it kind of felt like it was just going too easy on me. Like you always had a way out. And it felt like there was no challenge. It wasn't tense because you could always make your way back. Where in this version, getting those items, they're not readily available always.
Oh.
So there's actually a point in the game, I died once. I've actually beaten the game and I died once.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I had several close calls. And I think there's also post-game and stuff too that's probably even more difficult.
Sure.
But there was a point in the game where I didn't have any of these escape scrolls, is what they are, and I was going into the deeper and deeper parts of the dungeon, or up higher and higher in the tower, if you will, and I basically was fighting enemies that were way too strong for me, and I had nothing I could do to escape. So I basically eventually kicked it and I had to start over.
Oh, jeez. Okay, yeah.
Now,
That's one of the
so
fun things about it, though. That's my appeal in those dungeon crawlers, is
Yeah.
having that type of like the
oh,
chance to have everything reset is exciting.
it's pretty white knuckle. Like you are really tense. You know, your shoulders cramp up as you're like working your way around. Like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Yeah.
Now, this game does make a couple of things, so it's not like you're resetting every time from scratch. Like, for example, your party members that join you, they also gain levels, and their levels never actually reset. So even if you have to restart, you can have them join you again, and then their levels will stay the same. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, so you can kind of rely on them for a bit. Your levels will always reset, even if you use an escape scroll. But your equipment does not. So you can power up your equipment, you can gain new equipment, you can boost it with many different gems and things, or runes is what they're called, and you keep it as long as you tag it. So you have to spend some money to tag it, and if you die, you keep it all, or you can find it. It's man, this I feel like I'm kind of fumbling over myself here because there's so many different elements to this game. There's so many different elements to this game that kind of just make it, interesting and unique. So when you're going up the tower, you're collecting items, but your inventory only has 24 slots. So that's actually something you're kind of always managing is what items do you pick up, what items do you keep. You always have to make sure you have your equipment on you, of course.
Can you expand that maximum
Yes,
cap?
let me get to that in a second. When you're going up the tower, you have a health bar, of course, and you also have a fullness bar. So basically, you can get hungry. So you have to keep food on your person, or else you're going to basically start starving, and that can either lower your health or give you status effects. And you have to keep items on your person to heal yourself, food, and all that. But and you also have to keep things like arrows, rocks, like a monk's tag, like they're kind of like I don't know what you call them, like paper tags that have various effects on them to like.
Oh, it's like I forgot.
It's like a charm, like a
yeah,
Japanese
like it's
charm.
like you folded, like almost like
Yeah.
origami style. I
Yeah,
forgot
and
the exact
So
terminology.
like, for example, your you have tags that can cause an enemy to be stuck. So if it's an enemy that's too strong for you, if you have that tag, you can get them to basically get stuck, and then you can work your way around them. And it's got the normal roguelike style in that basically each floor is randomly generated, and you're looking for the stairs to the next floor. So you're basically wandering the map blindly, but there's items to reveal parts of the map or to reveal where the monsters are and things like that. But then like you mentioned, you can expand your inventory with pots. So you can find pots, and like a pot will have like 5 slots in it, and in your inventory it takes up 1 slot, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
But
So it's like expandable inventory within the inventory.
yeah, and there's quite a bit of management going on there. But there's also so many other things I haven't even talked about yet. First of all, in some of the dungeons, it can go from daytime to nighttime. And at nighttime, your weapons have no effect on the enemies, your main katana.
Oh.
And enemies are a lot stronger. And this is true for a lot of these roguelike games, or at least the ones I've played. When these enemies get a kill, whether it's one of your teammates that you're kind of traveling with, or at nighttime they can kill each other. They'll actually become they kind of fight each other at night. They level up, and when they level up from like level 1 to level 2, it's not just a minor boost in stats. They become significantly more dangerous. So as you're wandering around at night, you'll even get the notes on the screen saying like the dragon has killed something and become dragon 2, and now it's become dragon 3, and then you're like, oh crap, now there's a dragon 3 wandering around, and if I run into that, I'm dead. And so at night you actually get you get various abilities that you can use that are basically like magical like abilities. Like one of them is basically a kamehameha you can use on the enemies to attack them, because you can't use your weapon. So you have to use items or use these limited abilities that you get, but you can only use your abilities once per floor. So it's not as simple as just backing off and using these abilities. You kind of have to use them very, very sparingly, because else if you run out before you get to the stairs, then you're basically screwed. And then there's so many other things I haven't even mentioned. For example, there are lots of different traps on the floor, and you can see them with. You can eat some grass that allows you the ability to see traps, or use a scroll to see them. And these traps can do a whole lot of different things. There are traps that you can trip on, and if you trip on a trap, it can actually make you lose some of your equipment, and it can have a pot. If you're holding items in a pot, it can have that shatter.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's
And-
very grim. Yeah.
There's been times where I've had a pot and it's like full of items, and then it shatters, and then I don't have room to pick them all up again.
Oh, so they actually drop on the floor at least? So you can
yeah.
actually- Oh, good.
But sometimes there's monsters around and not so easy to pick up again. But also there are enemies that have various different status effects. Like I had a pot full of large onigiri, which is like your main food item, and then I had an enemy basically turn that pot into trash. Like it was just he attacked
Nice.
me and he just turned it into garbage. It's like, well, thanks. And there are also and so as you're going up the tower, this is kind of these are basically all the things that you're running into. Having the allies tag along can help a lot. For example, Tao, which is the panda girl, she can throw a boomerang at enemies from far away, and she has like perfect aim. So she doesn't do a lot of damage, but she can help. She can whittle them down before they get to you. And then there's the fox girl can do all these various status effects by. I guess this is a normal Japanese folklore. Like a tanuki can change into different creatures or imitations of creatures.
Yeah.
Is that normal? And so she can imitate other creatures and do their status effects on the enemies. So it doesn't do as much damage, but it sometimes can be very, very useful to have them get confused and walk away for a second.
But
And
it's like your overall impressions, though. Like, I'm kind of interested, like, in what you think about all these systems coming
Yeah.
together.
Well, there's still a few more I want to mention.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay, go for it.
you can get a pot. There are various different pots that have various different effects. For example, there's a pot that is like an incense pot, and when you throw items into it, they basically get destroyed, but it turns into a flame that basically makes you invulnerable to flame attacks on that floor. And then there's also pots that are synthesis pots, where you basically throw a weapon in, throw another weapon in, and then they basically merge their abilities to get a new weapon out. But the synthesis pots are kind of limited in what you can merge together. There are actually enemies on the battlefield that you can use as synthesis pots. You literally throw a weapon and they eat it. You throw another weapon at them and then they eat it. And then you can attack them with some other type of weapon that you have or ability, or have your friends attack them, and then you can get a weapon back that's actually
That's
stronger
pretty
than the one-
cool. Yeah, that
stronger
sounds
than the
really
one you
nifty.
had. But I actually learned this the hard way. You don't want to throw a weapon at one of those guys that's sleeping. If they're sleeping, they won't eat it, and your weapon will just do damage to them, and then it'll break.
Oh.
I actually had that happen to me. It doesn't break. It gets lost.
Ah, man.
So I had this weapon that I had been building up, throughout the game, and it was, pretty powerful, and it was kind of like the only sword I had. And like, oh, here's one of these mixer guys. I'm gonna throw my sword at it, throw something else at it, and see what happens. But I threw my sword at it, and then it got lost, and I was kind of screwed for a while because I didn't have a backup weapon. But I had a tag on it. You can spend money to have these weapons tagged, and once you get far enough into the tower, there's actually a lost and found, and you can find your weapons if you've had them tagged. And tagging is kind of expensive, but it's worth it because you can get them back. And I eventually did, but it was kind of difficult to get to that point in the game to actually get to the lost and found to see it. What else?
Well, let's talk about your overall feelings about that. Yeah,
First of all, I beat the main game.
Yeah.
You kind of get to I got to the point where I had plenty of escape scrolls, so I could get back to my base whenever if I needed to, if I was in danger. So I kind of got to that point where I had plenty of escape scrolls and pretty good weapons and things. So I was like, you know what? Let me just see how far I can go and how much further I can get with what I have. And it turns out it was tough, but it turns out I got to the final boss of the game, and then I defeated him. But I for this type of game, I don't know. That might only be like 30% of the content that's here. There are extra dungeons, bonus dungeons that you can access from a menu, and then there are some bonus like games that are like dungeons with a special rule and things like that. So there's still a bit more I want to see. The main game was about 20 hours long, so it's not super long. So it's pretty manageable in that regard. Now, I think the game looks great. It's got this old sprite style. And it looks really great on
It
the
looks nice. The screenshots you've been posting on Twitter, they make it look very bright and sharp. It looks
Yeah, it's pretty
beautiful.
crisp.
it's
Mhm.
really
I'm a big
colorful.
fan of the
It really pops
sprite-based
out.
graphics.
Yeah, we need those more. So I'm happy that it's sticking to it and not going to the 3D route.
And it looks especially great on the actual OLED on the Vita, but it also scales up really well to TVs if you're using it on a PS TV.
Good.
But I felt like all these systems in place were all pretty cool, and there's a lot of nifty things that kind of happen. There's enough randomness to things. One thing I have is on each floor, you can find another wanderer. They can be a blacksmith, where you give them your weapon, they power it up, and they give it back to you, just a minor upgrade after giving them some money. There's actually a guy that you can run into that asks you for money because he's low on his luck. The game revolves around luck and things. You can kind of tell that from the title. And if you give him enough money, he eventually gave me a gem. It was an indigo gem. And apparently there are 7 of these gems that unlock something, and I don't know what yet, 'cause I only got one of them. So that's there seem to be some of these bonuses in the game. There's also like a person you can run into where you give them your armor, and then they'll go off for a moment, and then if you run into them again, which sometimes takes a long time, they'll give your armor back to you with a major upgrade. So there's a lot of these cool little nifty things that can happen from floor to floor. There's enough randomness to things that you're always on your toes. It's difficult enough that you can't just breeze through it. I did feel like the dungeon is basically very linear. You're kind of just going from floor to floor to floor. There's one point where there's a branch of 3 different branches you can go in, but they're essentially the same. So when I think of like Etrian Mystery Dungeon, which is the most similar game I played last year, Etrian Mystery Dungeon, you basically chose which dungeon you wanted to go into, and they each kind of had their own gimmicks and things. Where this is just kind of a linear path, and you're basically just seeing how far you can get each time, which I guess is maybe more the true roguelike anyways. You're just basically going down further and further and further until you get to the end. But I kind of felt like I wish there was a little bit more variety there. But there are a bunch of other like extra dungeons I haven't been into that are not part of the main story, so I don't really want to criticize that too much when I haven't really touched those yet. But otherwise, I really enjoyed it. Maybe could have been a little bit more difficult, but then again, I'm also a very cautious player, so
Yeah, I mean those games have never really been that hard, especially like on the earlier ones. They tend to be kind of more even-handed. They're like not impossibly difficult. It's more like they're just I forget what the term is, but it's supposed to be like just fairly difficult. That's about the length of it.
I was playing this a bunch last night, and for a while. So also there are only really 2 boss encounters in the game, at least in the main game, and they're basically the same thing, just one stronger than the other. And when I got to the first boss encounter, like the first time, I was way out of my league. Like I kind of was just dodging enemies and going upstairs and not upgrading my equipment, not getting any stronger, and I was just kind of seeing how far I could go. And then I got to this boss, and he totally creamed me. I was able to warp away though, because I had an item to do that. And then I spent quite a bit of time just playing it safe and just kind of roaming around the lower floors, just powering up a bit before I went further. So it's not too bad as if you're just cautious. But it is fun to kind of get into those tense situations where you kind of are going step by step and not sure what's around the corner. But yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I kind of it was kind of short. I want to see what else the game has to offer, but there's a chance I've only scratched the surface really with the story mode completed. I really don't know how these games are normally constructed in terms of like post game content or extra content, but I kind of want to check that out and see what's there. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's great.
For sure.